Welcome, fellow adventurers, to Wild Mythology, the channel where we dive into everything related to myth, fairy tale, and legend. I welcome you with open arms and a warm serving of bread and salt to ensure your safety on this epic journey. As your guide and host, I'm thrilled to embark on this adventure with you, exploring the wonders of our A to Z list of mythical creatures from Greek mythology. From the ferocious Cerberus, the three-headed guard dog of the underworld, to the enchanting sirens whose irresistible voices lured sailors to their doom, we'll be diving deep into the world of over 90 fascinating creatures. But wait, there's more. As a special thank you to our loyal viewers, we're hosting an exciting scavenger hunt giveaway. By subscribing to our channel and watching this video, you'll have the chance to win a collection of the 5 Percy Jackson books, which have been modern classics in their own right, introducing a new generation to the fascinating world of Greek mythology. Now here's the exciting part. We'll be hiding a question somewhere in the video, and all you have to do is answer it correctly in the comments for a chance to win. We'll randomly select one lucky winner and announce them in our next video, so be sure to stay tuned and hit that notification bell and subscribe. Are you ready to embark on this epic quest? Do you have what it takes to uncover the hidden question and answer it correctly? Then let's not waste any more time and dive right into the A to Z list of mythical creatures from Greek mythology. Agrius and Oreius. Deep within Greek mythology lies the story of Agrius and Oreius, two half-bear, half-human brothers born to a bear and Polyphonte, one of the granddaughters of the war god Ares. Their birth was the result of a curse placed by the love goddess Aphrodite, who was outraged after Polyphonte refused to worship her and instead became an eternal virgin in the hunters of Artemis. As a result, Polyphonte was cursed with madness, causing her to sleep with a bear and give birth to the savage half-bear brothers. Agrius and Oreius were said to possess immense strength and a wild nature, living in the mountains and attacking and cannibalizing on travelers who dared to cross their paths. Zeus eventually grew tired of their aggressive behavior and ordered Hermes to kill them. However, Ares intervened and convinced Hermes to spare the twins because they were of his bloodline. So instead of death, Hermes transformed them into birds. Agrius became a vulture, a bird that was hated by all gods and men, and Oreius became an eagle owl, a bird representing a bad omen. The Aloadae. Otus and Ephialtes were no ordinary brothers. They were two colossal giants of Greek mythology known as the Aloadae. The two brothers were born to the sea god Poseidon and were known for their exceptional strength and staggering size. In fact, they grew at an astonishing rate of 9 fingers per month, reaching a towering height of 54 feet by the time they were just 9 years old. As they matured into adulthood, they set their sights on an audacious goal: the capture of Artemis and Hera, two of the most powerful and beautiful goddesses in the Greek pantheon. According to myth, the two giants devised a plan to storm Mount Olympus, piling mountains upon mountains to create a staircase that reached all the way to the heavens. Once they reached the top, they charged the gates, intent on capturing their divine targets. The sun titan Helios warned them of the impending danger, and the mighty Apollo stood ready to defend the gates with his golden arrows. In the end, the two giants were forced to retreat, but not before capturing the war god Ares and imprisoning him in a bronze jar. For 13 long months, Ares was trapped in his metallic prison until the messenger god Hermes was able to free him, while Artemis distracted the giants. The myth of Otus and Ephialtes took a thrilling turn when Artemis narrowly escaped their clutches and devised a cunning plan to defeat the giants once and for all. She transformed herself into a nimble deer and led the giants on a wild chase through the woods. As they hurled their spears at the elusive goddess, Artemis expertly dodged their attacks until the giants finally cornered her from 2 sides. Just when it seemed the goddess was trapped, the giants hurled their spears at her, falling right into Artemis's clever trap. You see, the goddess quickly dodged the spears, causing them to strike each other instead, thus bringing an end to Otus and Ephialtes. The Amphisbaena. The Amphisbaena was a creature from Greek mythology that was depicted as a serpent with two heads, one on each end of its body. According to legend, the Amphisbaena was spawned by the blood of the defeated Gorgon Medusa after she was slain by the hero Perseus. The creature was said to be extremely venomous, with a bite that could cause immediate death. It was also believed to be able to move in any direction, even backwards, and was a skilled burrower. Some myths even suggest that the Amphisbaena could breathe fire or poison, and that the creature was often associated with dark magic and used as a symbol of evil in ancient Greek mythology. The Anemoi Thuellai. The Anemoi Thuellai were not your average winds. These were powerful and tempestuous storm spirits known for their ability to unleash destruction in the skies and seas alike. Their father was the storm giant Typhon, the infamous king of monsters who was defeated by Zeus and banished to the depths of Tartarus. When their father was defeated, all the leftover storms that the storm giant left behind turned into the Anemoi. They were then free to roam and cause chaos wherever they pleased. However, their wild behavior eventually led Ilios, the god of winds, to lock them away on his floating island of Aeolia. Only the gods could release them, or Ilios himself, as he did when he granted Odysseus a bag of the storm spirits to help him navigate his way home. Antaeus. Antaeus was a giant in Greek mythology born to the mighty sea god Poseidon and the primordial earth goddess Gaia. Living in Libya, Antaeus was infamous for his menacing habit of challenging unsuspecting travelers to wrestling matches. And once the match began, his opponents were in for a world of hurt. According to myth, Antaeus drew his strength from the earth itself, which made him invincible as long as he remained in contact with the ground. With each passing moment, Antaeus would become even more powerful, making him virtually unbeatable. Unfortunately for his defeated foes, their skulls would become the building blocks for a temple dedicated to his father, Poseidon. However, Antaeus' reign of terror was eventually challenged by the legendary hero Heracles. The two strongmen clashed in an epic battle that shook the earth itself, with Antaeus dominating the early rounds. But Heracles soon realized that Antaeus' power came from his connection to the earth, and so he hatched a plan to take him down. With a mighty effort, Heracles lifted Antaeus off the ground and deprived him of his strength, ultimately strangling him to death. Arachne. Prepare to be caught in a web of excitement as we dive into the tale of Arachne, the skilled weaver of Greek mythology who dared to challenge Athena, the goddess of wisdom and handcraft. Arachne's talent in weaving was so great that she boldly claimed it was superior to Athena's, igniting the goddess's fury. Athena challenged Arachne to a weaving contest, and so the stage was set for an epic showdown as the two weavers began to create their tapestries. Athena's work depicted 4 separate contests between the gods and mortals, while Arachne's tapestries showcased instances of the gods mistreating mortals. When both had finished, Athena inspected Arachne's work, only to find that it was of better quality than hers. Enraged that a mortal had created a superior tapestry and insulted the gods, Athena ripped Arachne's creation to shreds. After destroying her work, Athena cursed Arachne and all of her descendants to be creatures that would eternally weave. Arachne was transformed into the first spider, and her skillful weaving was forever relegated to spinning webs. The Arae. In Greek mythology, the Arae were the terrifying embodiment of curses and imprecations, exacting vengeance on those who wronged the dead. These wrathful spirits took on the form of fierce females, wielding their powers to bring ruin and devastation upon their helpless victims. Dark and ominous, the Arae were invoked in binding and cursing rituals, feared for their ability to unleash their wrath upon those who crossed them. Those who were cursed usually gained the wounds or harm that they themselves performed on the dead. As the daughters of Nyx, the primordial goddess of the night, the Arae were believed to be most powerful when summoned in the shadows of darkness, their very presence striking fear into the hearts of mortals. Argus Panoptes. In Greek mythology, Argus Panoptes was a giant with 100 eyes all over his body. Born to the earth goddess Gaia, Argus was a formidable creature who was able to defeat Echidna, the mother of monsters, and become the greatest servant of Hera, the queen of the gods. Argus played a crucial role in the story of Zeus's lover Io, who was transformed into a white heifer by Zeus to protect her from Hera's jealousy. Hera, knowing that Zeus transformed Io, begged him to keep the cow as a gift. Having no reason to refuse, Zeus gave Hera the transformed Io. She then gave her to Argus and ordered him to guard her at all times. Argus dutifully obeyed, using his many eyes to keep watch over the cow. Even when Argus slept, 50 of his eyes were always open, making him the perfect guard. Zeus, determined to free Io from Argus's watchful gaze, sent Hermes to steal her away. With his cunning, Hermes managed to lull Argus to sleep with music, causing all of his eyes to close and giving the god the chance to kill him. The loss of her loyal servant devastated Hera, but in honor of Argus's eternal vigilance, she took his 100 eyes and placed them on the tail of her favorite bird, the peacock. Arion. Arion, the legendary horse, was believed to be the swiftest and most majestic horse of all time. He was born from the union of the powerful sea god Poseidon and the agriculture goddess Demeter. According to the myths, Demeter, while searching for her lost daughter Persephone, turned herself into a horse to hide from Poseidon's advances. However, Poseidon's love was too strong, and he changed himself into a stallion to mate with Demeter. This union resulted in the birth of the magnificent Arion. After his birth, Arion was given to King Antaeus, who was the demigod child of Apollo. The horse proved to be a valuable asset in battle, aiding in King Antaeus' triumphs. Later, Arion found himself in the hands of the mighty hero Heracles, who used him to defeat King Augeas for not keeping his promise to Heracles after he cleaned the king's stables for his 5th labor. After Heracles, Arion was given to Adrastus, the king of Argos. In a disastrous campaign against Thebes, all of Adrastus's men were killed. Arion, however, swooped in and saved the king from certain death, cementing his place as the swiftest horse in all of Greek mythology. Automatons. The automatons were self-operating machines and mechanical beings who were the products of the god of smithing Hephaestus or the brilliant inventor Daedalus. Made of metal and capable of moving and performing tasks without human intervention, these creatures were truly remarkable. And among the most famous of them was the mighty bronze giant Talos. Created by Hephaestus himself, Talos was designed to protect Zeus's lover, Europa, on the island of Crete. His incredible strength was legendary, and he could hurl boulders at enemy ships with ease. Talos had a single vein running from his neck to his ankle, containing a life-sustaining liquid which made him practically invulnerable to physical attacks. Plus, he had the power to heat himself up to a scorching temperature. Unfortunately, with the help of the witch Medea, Jason and the Argonauts would ultimately defeat him by removing a bolt from his ankle and draining his life force. Some other incredible automatons forged by Hephaestus were the Colchis bulls. These fire-breathing beasts were a gift for King Aeetes and proved to be a daunting challenge for Jason. In order to get the Golden Fleece from King Aeetes, the king gave Jason 3 tasks, one of which was when Jason had to yoke the Colchis bulls to a plow and use them to plow the field. Luckily, with the help of the sorceress Medea, Jason was able to withstand the bulls' intense heat and tame them, fulfilling his task and getting one step closer to claiming the Golden Fleece. The Basilisk. In the realm of Greek mythology, the basilisk was no ordinary serpent. He was a creature so powerful and deadly that its very presence could wither plants and destroy the environment. The basilisk was known as the king of snakes, and for good reason. Its venom was so toxic that a single drop was capable of killing even the mightiest of warriors or beasts. And if that wasn't enough, the serpent's breath was so foul that it could kill a man just by breathing on him. But the scariest ability the basilisk was known for was its terrifying gaze. Any mortal or any creature that looked into its eyes died instantly. Even though it was a terrifying creature, the basilisk was said to have a few weaknesses, one of which was the odor of a weasel. Another was a rooster's crow, and the third was said to be its own reflection. Perhaps the most interesting fact about the serpent was how it came into the world. According to legend, it was created when a snake or toad egg was incubated by a rooster. The Blemmyes. In the deserts of northern Africa, there lived a legendary mythical tribe known as the Blemmyes, a fearsome and aggressive group of headless men. It was said that their faces were located on their chests, with their eyes in the middle of the breasts or shoulders. These skilled warriors were known for their ability to engage in battle with travelers and adventurers who dared to cross their territory. Some tales even spoke of their cannibalistic nature and their tendency to devour their enemies. Despite their ferocity, myths also circulated about the Blemmyes' magical powers, which allowed them to disappear or become invisible at will. Cacus. In the depths of the Aventine Hill, the location where Rome would one day stand, a fire-breathing giant named Cacus lurked, terrorizing nearby farmers by stealing their cattle and sheep. Cacus was a giant from Roman mythology, and he was the son of Vulcan, the Roman counterpart of Hephaestus. Cacus's strength was unmatched, and his trickery was cunning, as he would drag his stolen goods by their tails to make it seem as though they had wandered off on their own. But when he dared to steal from the mighty Heracles, Cacus had met his match. Heracles pursued him to his cave, but Cacus used a massive boulder to block the entrance, hoping to avoid a confrontation. However, Heracles was undeterred and used his superhuman strength to dig through the mountain and enter the cave. What ensued was an epic battle, with Cacus spitting balls of fire and Heracles hurling boulders. The two clashed fiercely, but in the end it was Heracles who emerged victorious as he grabbed Cacus by the neck and strangled him to death. The Caladrius. The Caladrius was a mythical bird from Roman mythology believed to have healing powers. According to legend, the bird would only visit the bedsides of the sick and dying, and by looking into its eyes, it would absorb the person's illness or disease. They would then fly away, taking the affliction and dispersing it. In some versions of the myth, the Caladrius would only visit the pure of heart, while in others it would visit anyone in need of healing. The Caladrius was also believed to be able to predict the outcome of an illness, and its presence was seen as a good omen. The Calydonian Boar. Deep within the Greek forests, the Calydonian Boar roamed the land, with a fearsome reputation striking fear into the hearts of all who had heard its name. This massive creature, sent by the goddess of the hunt Artemis to punish the king of Calydon, was a beast unlike any other. Its razor-sharp tusks and impenetrable coat made it virtually invincible against any weapon. Desperate to put an end to the creature's wrath, the king summoned the greatest heroes of Greece to embark on a perilous hunt. Among them were the legendary warrior Theseus, the swift and nimble Atalanta, and even the king's own son, Meleager. Their bravery and skill were put to the ultimate tests as they battled the monstrous boar. But despite their best efforts, it seemed that nothing could stop it. But then, with a prayer to her patron goddess, Artemis, Atalanta let loose an arrow that found its mark and penetrated the boar's hide. Injured and weakened, the beast became easier to deal with, and Meleager was finally able to land the killing blow. However, the spoils of the hunt were not so easily divided. Atalanta had landed the first blow, and Meleager, in love with the brave and beautiful huntress, awarded her the prize. This decision caused a bitter feud among some of the hunters and eventually led to Meleager's own tragic end, the Catoblepes. The Catoblepes was a mythical beast described as a massive ox-like creature with a long, thin neck that was always pointed downward. Its head was said to be so large and heavy that the creature had to drag it along the ground, and its eyes were always fixed on the earth. The Catoblepes was said to be incredibly slow and lethargic, and its breath was said to be poisonous, able to kill any creature that inhaled it. According to legend, the ox-like creature was native to Africa and was rarely seen by humans due to its reclusive nature. Other legends said that the creature's meat was toxic, and that its gaze could turn anyone who looks directly into its eyes into stone. The Caucasian Eagle. Punishment of Prometheus is a legendary myth in Greek mythology that tells of the terrible suffering inflicted on the Titan who dared to disobey Zeus. The king of the gods was outraged when Prometheus gave the gift of fire to mankind without his approval. So he sent the savage Caucasian Eagle, one of the monstrous offspring of Typhon and Echidna, to devour Prometheus's liver each day in the Caucasus Mountains. For centuries, Prometheus endured unimaginable agony as the eagle tore away at his liver, only for it to regenerate overnight. But the arrival of the mighty hero Heracles brought a glimmer of hope. Witnessing Prometheus's torture, Heracles was determined to end the cycle of pain and free him from his torment. With bravery and strength, the hero engaged the ferocious eagle and succeeded in slaying it, bringing an end to Prometheus's suffering and freeing him from his chains. The Centaurs. Some of the most well-known mythical creatures from Greek mythology were the centaurs, creatures with the upper body of a human and the lower body of a horse. The centaurs originated from Centaurus, who was the child of King Ixion and the cloud nymph Nephele. Ixion fell in love with Queen Hera, Zeus's wife, and tried to seduce her. Zeus, suspecting Ixion's intentions, created a cloud nymph that looked exactly like Hera, and Ixion slept with her, resulting in Nephele's pregnancy. She gave birth to Centaurus, who was disfigured and hated by humans. Removing himself from civilization, Centaurus retreated to the mountains where he would eventually mate with some mares, resulting in the birth of the Centaurs. Another variant of centaurs were born from Zeus's frustration when he failed to seduce Aphrodite. He spilled his seed on the earth, resulting in the horned centaurs. Centaurs were often portrayed as wild and uncivilized, known for their ferocity in battle and their love of wine, music, archery, and women. The most famous centaur in mythology was Chiron, who was a child of Kronos, the king of the Titans, and an ocean nymph. Unlike other centaurs, Chiron was renowned for his intelligence and his kindness. He was abandoned by his mother and so raised by the two Olympians, Apollo and Artemis, who taught Chiron medicine, music, and archery. Chiron would later on take the role as a tutor to heroes such as Achilles and Jason. It was because of Chiron's teachings that many of these heroes became legendary. While Chiron was heroic and kind-natured, most centaurs were depicted as brutish and violent savage monsters who often left chaos and destruction in their wake. The most famous story involving centaurs was when they crashed the wedding of the king of the Lapiths people, resulting in a war called the Centauromachi. Both the centaurs and the Lapiths had a common ancestor, and so were cousins, but the centaurs attempted to kidnap the king's new wife, resulting in a bloody battle. Initially, the centaurs had the advantage and killed many of the Lapiths, but luckily the famous hero Theseus was passing through and helped the Lapiths win the war against the centaurs. Cerberus. Cerberus was the three-headed hellhound that guarded the entrance to the underworld. This monstrous creature, born from the king and queen of monsters Typhon and Echidna, was so ferocious that even the gods trembled in fear at the mere mention of his name. With a mane of snakes and a tail made of serpents, Cerberus was the ultimate guard dog, tasked with preventing the living from entering the underworld and the dead from escaping it. However, it was Heracles who dared to take on the impossible task of capturing Cerberus as his 12th and final labor for King Eurystheus. Heracles boldly descended into the underworld, facing off against the mighty Hades himself, in order to win the right to take the Hound. And so, with the condition that he returned Cerberus back to the underworld, Heracles set out to defeat the three-headed beast in a fierce and epic battle with no weapons to aid him. Against all odds, Heracles emerged victorious, having defeated Cerberus in unarmed combat that left the entire underworld in awe. He brought the fearsome creature back to King Eurystheus, who could hardly believe his eyes. Heracles then promptly returned Cerberus back to the underworld, where he continued to stand guard. The Cacus. The Cacus were two mischievous brothers from Greek mythology who were known for their pranks and trickery. They were said to be the sons of the sea titan Oceanus, and were often depicted as small, ugly men with tails. The Cacus would often cause trouble for travelers and locals alike, stealing their possessions and playing pranks on them. One of the most famous myths involving the Cacus is when they encountered the hero Heracles. In this myth, Heracles was traveling through Greece when he encountered the Cacus. The mischievous creatures stole Heracles' weapons and began to mock him, thinking they had outsmarted the famous hero. However, Heracles was not amused and so captured them and tied them to a shoulder pole. Luckily for them, their mother was able to convince Heracles to let them go in return for his weapons. Unfortunately, they would eventually piss off Zeus, who turned them into monkeys. The Ceryneian Hind. In the realm of Greek mythology, the Ceryneian Hind was no ordinary deer. This magnificent creature was said to be as swift as the wind, with golden antlers and brass hooves that shined like the sun. It was one of the 5 hinds gifted to the goddess of the hunt, Artemis. She was so taken by their beauty that she made 4 of them her chariot pullers and set the last one free as her sacred animal. For Heracles, the third of his 12 labors was to capture the elusive deer. But he knew that harming the Ceryneian Hind, a creature so loved by Artemis, would surely incur her wrath. And so he decided to hunt it without causing any harm. But the hind was far too fast and evasive, making it nearly impossible to catch. For an entire year, Heracles chased the hind through fields, forests, and mountains. Eventually, though, he succeeded in capturing it, but not before it suffered a broken antler. When Artemis learned of this, she was furious and demanded that Heracles return the hind immediately. But Heracles was able to convince her that he was only borrowing the creature for a short time, and after proving that he had completed his task, he released the hind back into the wild, where it ran free once more. Cetus of Ethiopia. Cetus of Ethiopia, also known as the Ethiopian sea monster, was a legendary sea creature in Greek mythology. According to the myth, Cetus was sent by Poseidon, the god of the seas, to ravage the coast of Ethiopia as punishment for Queen Cassiopeia's boasting that her daughter Andromeda was more beautiful than the sea nymphs. According to an oracle that the king and queen visited, the only way to appease Cetus and stop its attacks was to sacrifice Andromeda to the monster. Fortunately, Perseus, the hero known for slaying Medusa, happened to be flying by on his way home from his own adventures. He saw Andromeda chained to a rock by the sea and learned of her plight. When Cetus appeared to accept his sacrifice, Perseus battled the creature and eventually killed the beast with either his sword or by turning the beast into stone with Medusa's head. Perseus then freed Andromeda, married her, and brought her back to his home in Greece. Cetus of Troy. In this myth, Poseidon sent a different Cetus to destroy Troy because the king had betrayed him. Desperate to save his kingdom, the king consulted an oracle, which revealed that the only way to stop Cetus was to sacrifice his own daughter. However, Heracles arrived in the nick of time and offered to slay the monster himself in exchange for the king's prized horses, which were gifted to the king by Zeus. With his trusty bow and arrow in hand, Heracles bravely faced Cetus and battled the beast with all his might. After a fierce struggle, he finally emerged victorious, striking the monster with a fatal blow. But just as before, the king went back on his word and refused to honor his agreement with Heracles. Furious, the demigod gathered his men and launched a full-scale invasion of Troy, seeking revenge for the king's treachery. In a bloody battle, Heracles and his forces stormed the city, slaying the king and all of his sons, save for Priam, the last king of Troy. Charybdis. Beneath the turbulent waters of the narrow sea passage between Italy and Sicily lies the dreadful Charybdis, a monstrous sea creature with a giant mouth full of razor-sharp teeth at the center of a raging whirlpool. Legend has it that Charybdis was once a beautiful daughter of Poseidon and Gaia, cursed by Zeus to become an insatiable monster for causing massive flooding of her powers. She was chained to the ocean floor and forced to swallow and regurgitate seawater 3 times a day, creating a deadly whirlpool that engulfed anything in its path. Sailors feared her, knowing that one wrong move could result in their ships being crushed to pieces. Charybdis was often paired with Scylla, another terrifying sea monster that sailors had to choose between when navigating the narrow passage. In the epic journeys of Odysseus, Aeneas, and the Argonauts, Charybdis played a pivotal role. For his first time through the narrow passage, Odysseus decided to face off against Scylla. But unfortunately, for his second passage, Odysseus was forced to face Charybdis' whirlpool and was only able to survive by clinging to a fig tree. For Jason and the Argonauts, Hera arranged safe passage between the two monsters, but Aeneas and his crew were not so lucky. They were pulled into Charybdis' vortex and then spat out miles away near the island of the Cyclops. The Chimera. In Greek mythology, the Chimera was a fearsome creature with the head of a lion, the body of a goat, and the tail of a serpent. According to myth, the Chimera was born from the union of Typhon and Echidna, the king and queen of monsters. The Chimera's fiery breath and venomous tail made it a formidable foe, allowing it to kill many heroes. It was also terrorizing the countryside by lighting it on fire and devouring the livestock. In mythology, the hero Bellerophon was sent on a mission to slay the Chimera by the king of Lycia. Luckily, Bellerophon was aided in his task by the goddess Athena, who told him how to tame the winged horse Pegasus, which he would need to fly up to the Chimera. As the Chimera swiped at him, Pegasus dodged the attack, and Bellerophon struck it with his spear, only for the strike to do no damage. The Chimera then tried to breathe fire on the hero, but luckily Pegasus was swift enough to get away. Watching the beast breathe fire, Bellerophon had an idea. He took a block of lead and tied it to the end of his spear, then waited for the Chimera to breathe fire again. He then thrusted his spear into the creature's mouth, and as the flames engulfed the lead, it melted and suffocated the Chimera to death. Chrysomelos. Chrysomelos, also known as the Golden Fleece, was a legendary creature from Greek mythology. According to myth, the golden ram was the child of Poseidon and the beautiful nymph Theophane. The child was a ram because Poseidon had transformed Theophane into a sheep to hide her away from her many suitors. Poseidon then transformed himself into a ram, resulting in the birth of Chrysomelos. The story of Chrysomelos begins with Phrixus and Hela, the children of King Athamas and the cloud nymph Nephele. Later on, though, King Athamas fell in love and married Ino, the daughter of Cadmus. Ino hated her stepchildren and so secretly burned the land's crops, and then had the men who asked an oracle for help to lie to her. The men did so and told the kingdom that the crops would only regrow if the king's children were sacrificed. Luckily, right before they were sacrificed, the golden ram Chrysomelos saved Phrixus and Hela, and then carried them off into the sky. The ram was sent by their mother, Nephele, who told them it would carry them across the sea to somewhere safe, and that they should sacrifice the ram to Zeus once they land. Unfortunately, Hela fell off the ram during their flight, and is said to have either drowned in the Hellespont or be saved by Poseidon. Her brother Phrixus, though, was carried safely to the kingdom of Colchis. In Colchis, Phrixus sacrificed the golden ram to Zeus, and then presented its fleece to King Aeetes. The fleece was then hung in a sacred grove guarded by a never-sleeping dragon. Many years later, the hero Jason and his Argonauts set out on a quest to retrieve the golden fleece. With the help of the sorceress Medea, who was the daughter of King Aeetes, Jason was able to steal the fleece and bring it back to Greece. The Clazomenean Sow and the Crommyonian Sow. Clazomenean Sow was no ordinary pig. It was a flying monstrosity that brought chaos and destruction to the ancient Greek town of Clazomenia. The beast was said to be massive in size, with razor-sharp tusks and wings that cast a dark shadow over the city. Its mere presence was enough to strike fear into the hearts of the townspeople. Another sow in Greek mythology was the Crommyonian Sow, who happened to be the parent of the Calydonian Boar, a boar that caused a famous hunt in Greek mythology. The Crommyonian Sow was a massive and ferocious pig owned by an old crone named Phia, who commanded the beast to wreak havoc and feast on innocent villagers. But when the fearless hero Theseus arrived in the area, he knew he couldn't let the sow's rampage continue. Armed with his trusty sword and unwavering courage, Theseus set out to face the beast head-on. The battle was fierce and intense as the sow charged at Theseus with its razor-sharp tusks. But Theseus proved to be too skilled and cunning for the creature, and with a swift and mighty blow, he finally vanquished the sow and put an end to its terrorizing reign. But Phia was not content to let her prized possession be taken from her. Enraged and vengeful, she charged at Theseus with all her might, determined to avenge her beloved pig. However, Theseus was not one to be trifled with, and with a swift and deadly strike, he ended Thea's life as well. The Colchian Dragon. The Colchian Dragon was a monstrous snake-like creature that never slept and fiercely guarded the Golden Fleece and Colchis. It was one of the children of the monstrous Typhon and Echidna. With scales as hard as diamonds and eyes that burned with a fiery rage, it was no easy task to even approach the dragon, let alone defeat it. The arrival of Jason and the Argonauts on the shores of Colchis would soon change that. King Aeetes, ruler of Colchis, agreed to give Jason the fleece, but only if he completed several impossible tasks. Thankfully, Medea, King Aeetes' daughter, had fallen in love with Jason and was willing to use her magical powers to aid him. Despite the seemingly impossible obstacles in their path, Jason and Medea emerged triumphant, completing every task that King Aeetes threw their way. However, when it came time for the king to fulfill his promise and hand over the Golden Fleece, he went back on his word, refusing to give it up. Undeterred, Jason and Medea hatched a plan to sneak in and take the fleece for themselves. They encountered the Colchian Dragon, and whether through Medea's use of her narcotic herbs to make the dragon fall asleep, or through a fierce battle, Jason emerged victorious. With the Colchian Dragon defeated, Jason and the Argonauts claimed the Golden Fleece and fled Colchis, with Medea at Jason's side. The Cretan Bull. King Minos, ruler of Crete, prayed to Poseidon, the god of the seas, for a sign to establish his rule. Poseidon sent Minos a magnificent white bull and instructed him to sacrifice the creature to the gods. However, Minos was struck by the bull's beauty and decided to keep it alive, defying Poseidon's wishes. Furious at the king's disobedience, Poseidon decided to take revenge. He made the king's wife fall in love with the bull, resulting in the birth of the fearsome Minotaur, a half-bull, half-man creature. But Poseidon's punishment did not end there. He made the white bull go wild and set it loose on the island of Crete, terrorizing its inhabitants and establishing the legend of the ferocious Cretan Bull. Years later, Heracles, the great hero of Greek mythology, arrived on Crete as part of his seventh labor. King Minos, recognizing Heracles' strength, offered him the bull without expecting anything in return. Heracles wrestled the beast and was able to capture the bull and bring it back to show the completion of his labor. However, Heracles released the bull in the Athenian town of Marathon, where it ran rampant, destroying crops and homes. In honor of its rampage, the bull was renamed the Marathon Bull. Later on, the bull killed one of King Minos' sons, resulting in a war between Crete and Athens that ended with the Athenians having to give human sacrifices to the Minotaur. Luckily, Theseus, the great Athenian hero, would later encounter the Marathon Bull and sacrifice it to the gods. The Cyclops. The Cyclops were one-eyed giants renowned for their immense strength, expert craftsmanship, and unrelenting ferocity. Legend has it that the first Cyclops were Argus, Brontes, and Steropes, born from the primordial gods of the sky and earth, Uranus and Gaia. Despite their godly parentage, the Cyclops were not well received by their father, who found their monstrous forms revolting. Consequently, the elder Cyclops, along with their hundred-handed brothers, were imprisoned in the abyssal depths of Tartarus. It wasn't until Zeus, the king of the gods, freed them that the Cyclops' incredible talents were put to use in the epic battle against the Titan Kronos. The elder Cyclopses forged mighty weapons, including Zeus's thunderbolt, Poseidon's trident, and Hades' helm of darkness. Three major weapons which played a crucial role in the Olympians' victory over the Titans. After the war, the elder Cyclops remained in the forges of Hephaestus, crafting weapons for the gods and thunderbolts for Zeus. However, the most famous encounter with a Cyclops in mythology happened when the clever hero Odysseus and his crew landed on the island of Polyphemus. This Cyclops was the child of Poseidon and the sea nymph Thoosa, and he quickly captured Odysseus and his men, imprisoning them in his cave. Polyphemus proceeded to eat the men one by one, starting with two of Odysseus' crew members. But as always, Odysseus was quick to hatch a plan to escape. He offered Polyphemus some wine, telling him that his name was Nobody. When the Cyclops fell asleep from the wine, Odysseus and his men heated a wooden stake until it was red hot. Then they plunged it into Polyphemus' eye, blinding him. In his agony, Polyphemus stumbled around the cave, searching for the men, but Odysseus and his crew had hidden themselves under the bellies of Polyphemus' sheep, making their escape as the Cyclops led his flock out to graze. Polyphemus, unable to find the men, cried out for help to the other Cyclopses on the island, but since he could only shout that nobody had hurt him, they did not come to his aid, allowing Odysseus and his crew to slip away. However, Odysseus couldn't resist taunting Polyphemus, revealing his true identity and making fun of the Cyclops. In his anger and pain, Polyphemus prayed to his father Poseidon to curse Odysseus and make his journey home difficult. And so the god of the seas and earthquakes set in motion a series of events that would make Odysseus' journey home a treacherous and perilous one. The Cynocephalai. Deep in the mountain regions of North Africa, there lived a fabled tribe known as the Cynocephalai, a people with the heads of dogs. Despite their beastly appearances, they were said to possess a level of intelligence capable of understanding human speech, even if they communicated with barks and hand signals. Avoiding trade, these mysterious beings sustained themselves through hunting, roasting their prey under the scorching sun and fashioning clothes out of their hides. They also reared flocks of sheep, goats, and donkeys, and were also said to be unmatched in their proficiency with the bow and spear. The Dragons of Demeter. In the mystical world of mythology, the goddess of agriculture, Demeter, was renowned for her benevolence towards those who showed her kindness. One such mortal was Triptolemus, who had provided her with great hospitality while she was searching for her kidnapped daughter, Persephone. In gratitude for his kindness, Demeter gifted Triptolemus with the knowledge of agriculture and two serpent-like dragons to pull his winged chariot. She charged him with the task of sharing this knowledge with the world. With the power of his dragons, Triptolemus soared across the sky, bringing the gift of agriculture to people far and wide. But there was one group who rejected his message, the Scythians, ruled by their king Lyncus. Refusing the offer, Lyncus attacked Triptolemus and killed one of his beloved dragons. Demeter, furious with the injustice, punished Lyncus by transforming him into the very first lynx. The Dragons of Medea. The dragons of Medea were no ordinary beasts. They were two mighty sun dragons bestowed upon the cunning and ruthless sorceress by none other than her grandfather, Helios, the titan of the sun. But when Medea discovered that her beloved Jason was planning to abandon her and marry a princess from Corinth, she was consumed by a seething rage. Driven to the bank of madness, she did the unthinkable. She killed her own children that she had had with Jason, as well as the king and princess of Corinth. With blood on her hands and a heart full of vengeance, Medea summoned her two powerful dragons to aid in her escape from the city. The sun dragons roared to life, spreading their enormous wings and soaring into the air, carrying Medea away to safety in Athens. The Dryads. The Dryads were nymphs of Greek mythology who were the spirits of the trees and the forest. They were usually depicted as beautiful young maidens who were born from the trees themselves and were considered to be the guardians of the forests. Each dryad was believed to be tied to a specific area of trees and were said to be shy creatures who would hide from humans but were known to be fierce protectors of their trees and the forest. A specific group of dryads were known as the Hamadryds, who were tied to a specific tree, and if that tree died, the Hamadryd would also perish. Dryads were also known for their beauty and their ability to charm anyone who dared to approach them, including the gods. Some of the most famous dryads in Greek mythology include the Blemmyes, the first dryads born from the blood of the primordial sky god Uranus. Daphne is another famous dryad who was transformed into a laurel tree to escape the advances of the god Apollo. And Eurydice was another. She was the wife of the musician Orpheus and was killed by a snake while trying to escape from a lustful shepherd. Echidna. Echidna was the legendary queen of monsters, a legacy well earned, for she was the lover of Typhon, the king of monsters, and the mother of the most notorious creatures in Greek mythology, including Cerberus, the Hydra, the Chimera, the two-headed dog Orthus, the Sphinx, the Nemean lion, the Colchian Dragon, who was the guardian of the Golden Fleece, the 100-headed dragon Ladon, the Caucasian Eagle, and the Crommyonian Sow. Legend has it that Echidna was the granddaughter of Gaia, and the offspring of Phorcys, the god of sea dangers, and Ceto, the goddess of sea monsters. Depicted as a monstrous creature with the upper body of a beautiful woman and the lower body of a serpent or dragon, Echidna's appearance alone was enough to strike fear into the hearts of mortals. Some depictions even gave her 100 snake heads for hair. Living in a cave deep within the bowels of the earth, Echidna would capture and rip to shreds any human who dared to venture too close. Despite her fearsome reputation, Echidna met her match in Argus, the 100-eyed giant. In an epic battle that shook the entire area, Argus managed to slay the Queen of Monsters, putting an end to her reign of terror once and for all. Eidolons. Eidolons were the ghostly apparitions or spirits of the dead. They were believed to be the embodiments of the deceased and could manifest in various forms, such as the appearance of the person when they were alive or in a distorted or ghostly form. Eidolons were said to be able to haunt or possess the living and could be summoned through necromancy or other forms of magic. They were often associated with the underworld and were believed to reside throughout the realm of the dead. According to some accounts, Eidolons were not the actual souls of the deceased, but rather a type of illusion or projected created by the gods. They were also sometimes referred to as phantoms, shades, or specters. Empusa. Empusa was a female supernatural creature or demon known for seducing men and feeding on their flesh and blood. She was often depicted as a beautiful woman with flaming eyes, one leg made of bronze and the other leg of a donkey, and sometimes with the wings of a bird or bat. Empusa was also believed to have the ability to shapeshift into other forms, such as a dog, crow, or bird. Empusa was said to be either the daughter or servant of the goddess Hecate, who was associated with witchcraft, crossroads, and the night. According to some myths, Empusa was sent by Hecate to seduce men and lead them astray from their paths, while in other versions, Empusa acted on her own. Some other accounts state that Empusa would flee and conceal herself, emitting a shrill shriek when subjected to verbal insults. The Erymanthian Boar. The Erymanthian Boar was a fearsome creature from Greek mythology known for its gigantic size and strength. It was described as being incredibly large and powerful, with razor-sharp tusks and a coat of bristly hair. It It was known for its violent temperament and would often attack anything that crossed its path. The fourth labor of the hero Heracles was to capture the Erymanthian boar alive and bring it back to King Eurystheus. Heracles journeyed to Erymanthia, where he tracked and chased the boar through the snowy mountains. Using his great strength and cunning, Heracles was eventually able to capture the boar and bring it back to King Eurystheus, who was so frightened by its size and ferocity that he had to hide in a large jar until Heracles carried it away. The Ethiopian Bull. The Ethiopian bull was said to be a carnivorous bull with a red hide that was impervious to any weapon. It was said to be twice the size as a regular bull, have the speed of a horse, red fur, the eyes of a lion, and horns that were mobile and were able to move anywhere on their head. The only supposed way to defeat one was to trick it into falling into a pit. The Furies. The Erinyes, also known as the Furies, were three fearsome female creature deities charged with the duty of avenging crimes and punishing wrongdoers. Born from the blood of the castrated god Uranus after he was overthrown by his son Kronos, the three sisters were named Alecto, the Angry, Agera, the Grudging, and Tisiphone, the Avenger. Depicted as relentless creatures with fiery eyes, wings, and snakes for hair, the Furies were often seen wearing dark robes and wielding whips, and their presence was accompanied by storms and thunder. These formidable sisters were responsible for punishing heinous crimes such as murder, perjury, injustice against the gods, and unfilial behavior. They relentlessly pursued their victims, tormenting them until they were driven mad or brought to justice. The curse of the Erinyes could be invoked by a victim seeking justice, bringing torment and misery to the criminal. The wrath of the Furies was often manifested in several ways, such as madness inflicted upon a patricide or matricide, illness or disease inflicted upon murderers, and even death, hunger, and disease upon nations harboring such criminals. The only way to placate the wrath of the Furies was through a completion of a task assigned for atonement and the performance of ritual purification. In the underworld, the Furies were also servants of Hades and Persephone, overseeing the torture of the worst criminals. The Giganese. The Giganese were a tribe of towering giants with 6 arms. Born of the earth goddess Gaia, they were feared for their savagery and violent tendencies, such as feasting on raw flesh and attacking helpless travelers. But it was in the epic tale of Jason and the Argonauts where the Giganese earned their place in Greek mythology. After landing on the giant's island, Jason went off to explore with some men. Not soon after, the rest of the Argonauts were met with a ferocious assault by the 6-armed creatures. Fortunately, the mighty Heracles was still among the crew at the time, and he held off the Giganese long enough for Jason to return with his men. A brutal battle ensued, and though the Argonauts emerged victorious, they left a trail of slain Giganese in their wake. Geryon. Geryon was a fearsome creature from Greek mythology who was known for his strength and his unique appearance. He was described as a giant with 3 heads, 3 bodies, 6 arms, and 6 legs, all fused together. He was the son of Chrysaor and the grandson of the Gorgon Medusa. In mythology, Geryon had a herd of red cattle that were guarded by the 2-headed dog Orthrus and a herdsman named Euration. Geryon's most famous appearance in Greek mythology was in the myth of Heracles' 10th labor, in which the hero was tasked with capturing the giant's prized red cattle. When Heracles arrived at the giant's home, he was instantly attacked by Orthrus and Euration. Luckily, it only took one strong hit with his club to kill both. Furious that his minions were dead, Geryon attacked the hero while wielding 3 spears and 3 shields. The battle was fierce and long, for every time Heracles injured Geryon, he would heal a moment later. As the battle raged on, Heracles had a hunch that he would have to kill Geryon 3 times in quick succession, since the giant had 3 bodies. So after dealing with Geryon's shields, Heracles dropped his club and pulled out his bow. He then shot 3 arrows in the giant's 3 hearts, thus killing the mighty Geryon. The Gigantes. Gaia, the earth goddess, was furious that her children, the Titans, were defeated by Zeus and the Olympians. So she sought the help of her brother, Tartarus, and together they conceived a race of wild and ugly children known as the Gigantes. These giants were depicted with snake-like legs, serpentine tails, and sometimes multiple heads. They were known for their immense size, unsurpassed strength, and their unrelenting hostility towards the gods. The Gigantes played a crucial role in one of the most significant events in Greek mythology, the Gigantomachy. This was a war between the Gigantes and the Olympians for control of the universe. The battle was waged across various locations in Greece, and both sides unleashed their full power in a brutal and bloody conflict. The gods fought with their signature weapons, such as Zeus's thunderbolts and Apollo's bow, while the Gigantes were said to have wielded boulders and trees as weapons. However, a prophecy foretold that a giant could only be killed by a mortal and a god working together. So the Olympians enlisted the help of heroes like Heracles and Dionysus to aid them in the battle. Heracles used his arrows to injure all the Gigantes, allowing the gods to gain the advantage in their epic one-on-one battles. Dionysus, who still wasn't a full god at the time, took care of the minor giants, allowing the minor gods to defeat them. The Gigantomachy was a fierce and grueling battle, but eventually the gods emerged victorious. All the giants were destroyed, and whatever remained of them was locked away in Tartarus. The Gorgons. In the depths of the ancient Greek myths, there were three monstrous sisters known as the Gorgons. They were the daughters of Phorcys and Ceto, sea deities associated with oceanic wonders and horrors. The two eldest sisters, Euryale and Stheno, were depicted as winged women with scaly skin, razor-sharp claws, and tusks that resembled those of a boar. It was also said that in some myths, the blood drawn from the right side of a Gorgon could be used to heal someone and bring them back to life, while blood drawn from the left side of their bodies was a deadly poison. But the youngest sister, Medusa, was different. She was once immortal, known for her breathtaking beauty that could turn the heads of even the gods. One day, however, Poseidon, the god of the seas, laid his eyes on Medusa and was overcome with desire. He violated her in the temple of Athena, the goddess of wisdom, who was outraged but could not punish Poseidon. Instead, Athena cursed Medusa, transforming her into a hideous monster with the lower body of a serpent, the upper body of a scaly woman, venomous snakes for hair, and a gaze that could turn any living creature to stone. Due to her curse, Medusa became an outcast and was forced to live in seclusion with her sisters, who were also outcasts. They dwelled on an island at the edge of the world, where they guarded treasures and valuable objects in a cave. Medusa's reputation of turning people into stone became widespread across Greece, and eventually led to the interests of the hero Perseus. In order to save his mother from being married off to a king, Perseus declared that he would hunt Medusa and bring her head back in exchange. With the help of Athena and Hermes, Perseus made his way to Gorgon Island. Using the reflection of a bronze shield as a mirror, he approached Medusa without meeting her eyes, and then swiftly decapitated her. He then took her head and used the flying sandals of Hermes to quickly get away from the other two Gorgons. Medusa's death had a bizarre consequence, as she was pregnant with Poseidon's children. The moment her head was cut off, two beings emerged from her neck: Pegasus, a majestic winged horse, and Chrysar, a golden-skinned man who became the father of the three-bodied giant Geryon. Throughout the rest of his quest, Perseus would use Medusa's head to turn his enemies into stone. Once he saved his mother, he gave the head to Athena, who fused it with a shield, thus creating Aegis, the shield that terrified any who looked upon it. The Grey Sisters. The Grey Sisters were triplets from Greek mythology who shared one eye and one tooth among them. They were depicted as old women with gray hair and skin. According to myth, the Grey Sisters lived in a cave in the farthest corner of the world near the entrance of the underworld. In the myth of Perseus, the hero sought out the Grey Sisters in order to obtain information on how to defeat the Gorgon Medusa and where her location was. Perseus tricked the sisters into revealing the location of Medusa's lair by stealing their shared eye while they passed it between them. The Grey Sisters were angered by Perseus's theft, but he returned the eye in exchange for the information he needed. The Griffins. In the world of mythology, few creatures are as majestic and fearsome as the griffin. With the head, wings, and forelegs of an eagle, and the body, hind legs, and tail of a lion, these creatures embody both the grace of the sky and the strength of the earth. While griffins are said to have originated in Egyptian mythology, they have been adapted and incorporated in many different mythologies around the world. In Greek mythology, griffins were known as fierce and powerful creatures that guarded immense deposits of gold in the mountains of Scythia. Unfortunately, they were in constant battle with a tribe of Cyclopses who were determined to seize the griffins' gold for themselves. The battle between the griffins and the Cyclopses were said to be epic. The Cyclopses fought on horseback and wielded axes and spears in a flurry of violence and fury, while the griffins used their razor-sharp talons and wings to lift them high above the fray and attack from the sky. Despite the ferocity of their battles, the griffins ultimately proved victorious, driving off the Cyclopses and continuing to guard their hoard of gold for ages to come. The Harpies. The Harpies, daughter of Thamos, the god of sea wonders, and the sea nymph Electra, were a fearsome trio of sisters. They were depicted either as women with wings for arms, or with the bodies of large birds and the heads of women. Their talons were sharp, and their feathered tails deadly, making them a force to be reckoned with. In one famous myth, the Harpies were sent by Zeus to torment the blind prophet Phineus, who had revealed one of Zeus's secret plans. Every time Phineus sat down to eat, the Harpies would swoop in and steal his food from the table, leaving him to starve. But when the hero Jason and his fearless Argonauts arrived, they were determined to put an end to the Harpies' reign of terror. With the help of two of his men who could fly, Jason ordered them to drive the Harpies away and kill them. However, the Harpies' fates were not sealed, as their sister Iris, the goddess of rainbows, intervened and saved them from certain death. The Hecatuncheires. The Hecatuncheires were no ordinary brothers. They were colossal beings, each with 100 arms and 50 heads. Briareus, Caucus, and Aegus were their names, and they were the sons of the Earth Mother Gaia and the Sky Father Uranus. As well as their brothers, the elder Cyclopses, the Hecatuncheires were banished to Tartarus by their own father for their unusual appearance. There they were tortured until Zeus, the king of the gods, came to their aid. In gratitude, the Hecatuncheires joined Zeus and the Olympians in their epic battle against the powerful Titans. With their incredible strength, the Hecatuncheires hurled boulders larger than mountains at their enemies, helping to secure a crucial victory for the Olympians. As a result, they were appointed as the Wardens of Tartarus, where they watched over the Titans for eternity. The Hippolectrian. The Hippolectrian was a creature that had the head, wings, and front legs of a horse, and the hindquarters and tail of a rooster. This strange hybrid creature was believed to be the offspring of Poseidon, the god of the seas, and one of the Harpies. The Hippolectrian is not very well known in Greek mythology, and there are few stories or myths that feature it. However, it is often depicted in artwork and was sometimes used as a symbol of fertility and abundance. Hippocampus. Hippocampi were creatures that had the upper body of a horse and the lower body of a fish or dolphin. They were often depicted as the steeds that pulled the chariot of Poseidon and other sea gods and goddesses. According to legend, Poseidon created the hippocampi by mating his own stallions with sea nymphs. The name hippocampus is derived from the Greek words hippos, which means horse, and campos, which means sea monster. The Horses of Achilles. The Horses of Achilles were two immortal horses named Xanthus and Balius, and they were the children of one of the Harpies and Zephyrus, the god of the west wind. According to legend, these horses were a gift from Poseidon to Peleus, who was marrying the sea nymph Thetis. Together, Peleus and Thetis had a child named Achilles, one of the most famous heroes in all of Greek mythology. When Achilles became a warrior, he was gifted the horses as a symbol of his heroism and strength. They were said to be incredibly swift and powerful, able to run across water, and depending on the myth, even speak with human voices. During the Trojan War, the horses of Achilles were said to have played a pivotal role in his victories. It was said that they would often speak to Achilles and warn him of danger in battle. However, when Achilles was killed by Paris, the horses were left to mourn their master and wept tears. The horses of Ares. In Greek mythology, the 4 horses of Ares were a team of fearsome and immortal horses that pulled the chariot of the god of war. The horses were named Aethon, Phobos, Phlogius, and Canebus. They were said to have fiery eyes and manes of flame. The horses were also able to breathe fire, and they had powerful hooves that could cause small earthquakes. They were often depicted as being ridden by Ares in battle, with the god using his chariot and horses to sow chaos and destruction on the battlefield. The Hydra. In the murky marshes near Lake Lerna lurked a fearsome beast that struck terror into the hearts of all who crossed its path. The Lernia Hydra. Born to the monstrous king and queen of monsters, Typhon and Echidna, this serpent was no ordinary creature. It possessed the incredible ability to regenerate its 9 heads, with 2 more sprouting in the place of each one that was severed. The Hydra's lair was a place of darkness and death. It devoured livestock and spewed a toxic breath that tainted the land. The mere thought of crossing paths with the Hydra was enough to make even the bravest of warriors tremble in fear. Except for Heracles, who was tasked with completing 12 labors as penance for a terrible crime. The second of these labors was to slay the Hydra. Accompanied by his nephew Aeolus, Heracles set out to confront the beast. The battle that ensued was a fierce one, with Heracles hacking away at the Hydra's writhing heads, while Aeolus shot arrows at the beast. For every head that was severed, 2 more grew in its place. It seemed like the Hydra was unbeatable, but then Aeolus came up with a plan. He realized that if they could cauterize the wounds left by each head that was cut off, it could stop the regenerative process. So after Heracles lopped off a head, Aeolus took a torch and seared the stumps shut. Finally, with only 1 head remaining, Heracles made the decision to crush it under a massive rock. As a testament to his triumph, Heracles dipped his arrows in the Hydra's poisonous blood, making them deadly weapons that he would use in future battles. Ichthyocentaurs. Deep beneath the rolling waves of the ocean, there lurked fearsome and mysterious creatures known as the Ichthyocentaurs. These mythical beings were unlike any other. They had the upper body of a human, complete with lobster claw horns atop their head, the powerful lower limbs of a horse, and a serpentine fishtail. Among them, 2 brothers stood out, Bithos and Athros. Born to the Titan king Kronos, they were siblings of the wise centaur Chiron. Unlike their wild and savage centaur kin, the Ichthyocentaurs were known for their sophistication and connection to the ocean's creatures. They were often depicted as battling sea monsters and were said to be able to transform these fearsome beasts into harmless sea creatures through the enchanting melodies they played on their conch. In Greek mythology, they were often associated with the power and dangers of the sea, and were respected by sailors who looked to them for guidance and protection. Hey, it's time for our legendary scavenger question. Are you ready to put your knowledge to the test? Because here's the question. Can you name one of the monstrous offspring of Typhon and Echidna, the fearsome king and queen of monsters? Now, don't keep it to yourself. Comment your answer below for a chance to win the epic collection of Percy Jackson books. Now, our adventure is not over yet, so buckle up and get ready for more mythical creatures. Hippotanes. Hippotanes, also known as hippotanes, were 2-legged creatures with the upper body of a human and the lower body of a horse. They were considered to be a type of centaur, but instead of having a horse body from the waist down, they only had horse legs. Ipotanes were believed to inhabit the forests and mountains of ancient Greece, and were associated with hunting and rustic activities. They were considered to be very swift and agile, and were often depicted carrying bows and arrows. Ipotanes were also known for their close relationship with nature and their ability to communicate with animals. According to myth, they could even control the weather and create rain or sunshine by whistling or singing. Some stories depict them as protectors of the wilderness, fiercely defending their territory from human encroachment. Despite their animalistic appearance, Ipotanes were considered to be noble creatures and were respected by humans and gods alike. The Ismenian Dragon. In the land where the great city of Thebes would one day stand, there lurked a ferocious serpent known as the Ismenian Dragon. This beast, a spawn of the god of war, Ares, guarded a sacred spring with deadly force. The first hero, Cadmus, had sent men to draw water from the spring, only to meet their gruesome end in the jaws of the dragon. But when the hero Cadmus learned of the fate of his men, he did not cower in fear. Instead, he saw an opportunity to prove his mettle and slay the fearsome serpent. In a glorious battle, Cadmus faced off against the dragon, wielding nothing but his wits and a large stone. With a mighty blow, Cadmus smashed the dragon's skull and claimed victory over the fearsome beast. But his trials were far from over. The goddess Athena instructed him to sow the dragon's teeth, from which sprang a crop of 5 warriors armed in full battle armor. These warriors would become the ancestors of Thebes and would become Cadmus's trusted generals. But his victory over the dragon came with a steep price. Ares, enraged at the death of his son, punished Cadmus by turning him into a dragon and forcing him to serve the god of war for 8 long years. Even after his servitude ended, Cadmus's troubles were far from over. Ares would later punish him once again for his role in slaying the dragon. Campe. Campe was the first Dracaena, meaning she-dragon, in Greek mythology. She was the daughter of the primordials Gaia and Tartarus, and was the one who tortured the elder Cyclopses and the Hecatoncheires when they were imprisoned in Tartarus. Known as one of the most monstrous-looking creatures in all of mythology, Campe was depicted with the head of a woman with serpentine hair and an upper body covered with dragon scales. 50 bestial heads that would morph from wild beast to wild beast were arranged about her waist, and over her scaly legs were thousands of vipers. She had huge dragon-like claws that always carried a deadly whip, and on her upper back were dark reptilian wings. Finally, coming out of her lower half was a deadly scorpion tail, dripping with poison even more deadly than the Hydra's. In a battle of epic proportions, Campe was defeated by the mighty Zeus, who freed the Cyclops and Hecatoncheires. Had it not been for Zeus, even the greatest of heroes such as Heracles, Perseus, and Theseus would have been no match for the terrible she-dragon. Carcanos. Carcanos was a massive crab used by the goddess Hera to hinder the great Heracles during his second labor of slaying the dreaded Hydra. While Heracles was fiercely battling the multi-headed serpent, Hera sent Carcanos to disrupt the fight. The gigantic crab tried to sink his claws into Heracles, but the hero was too quick and crushed Carcanos with a swift kick. Despite his failure, Carcanos would later earn a place among the stars as the constellation Cancer, courtesy of Hera's gratitude. Ladon. Ladon was a monstrous 100-headed dragon that was the offspring of the fearsome Typhon and Echidna. Hera, the queen of the gods, tasked Ladon with guarding the precious golden apples in the gardens of the Hesperides due to his ability to never have to sleep and his deadly poisonous breath. When Heracles was tasked with retrieving the golden apples for his 11th labor, he had to face Ladon in battle. Now, there are 2 versions of the myth about what happened next. In the first version, Heracles battled Ladon to the death, using multiple arrows dipped in Hydra blood to finally defeat the dragon and claim the apples. The next day, Jason and the Argonauts would stumble upon Ladon's rotting corpse in the garden, and Hera would lift his body into the stars as the constellation Draco. In the second version, Heracles was unable to defeat Ladon in battle. Instead, he went to the nearby hill where Atlas was holding up the sky and made a deal with the Titan. So Heracles took Atlas's place holding up the sky, while the Titan retrieved the golden apples. When Atlas returned, Heracles tricked him into holding up the sky again, while the hero made his getaway with the apples. Laelap and the Tumessian Fox. Laelap was no ordinary hound. This amazing creature was a prized possession of Zeus, who then gifted it to Cephalus. Laelap was a hunter of unparalleled speed and precision, able to catch any prey that crossed his path. However, there was one creature that he was never able to catch: the Tumessian Fox. This swift and elusive creature was a child of the monstrous Typhon and Echidna, and was notorious for being impossible to catch. The myth of Laelap and the Tumessian Fox began when the city of Thebes insulted the powerful wine god Dionysus. In response, Dionysus sent the Tumessian Fox to wreak havoc on the city, causing destruction and devouring children. King Creon, desperate for a solution, turned to his trusted friend Amphitryon for help. Amphitryon reached out to Cephalus, who agreed to lend him Laelap to catch the fox. The two creatures were unleashed upon each other, resulting in an endless cycle of pursuit. Laelap, who could catch anything, was unable to catch the fox, who could avoid anything. The two creatures chased each other around the world for years, until Zeus, the king of the gods, grew tired of their eternal chase. He turned the two into stone and placed them among the stars as constellations: Canis Major for Laelap, and Canis Minor for the Tumessian Fox. The Laestrygonians. The Laestrygonians were a tribe of giant cannibals who were the children of Gaia and Poseidon, and they were said to be 3 times the size of a man. They were encountered by the hero Odysseus during his journey back home after the Trojan War. When Odysseus and 12 ships of his men arrived at the island of the Laestrygonians, they were greeted by the queen, who invited them to her palace. However, when 3 of Odysseus's men went to explore the island, one was attacked and eaten by the king of the giants. The other 2 returned to Odysseus, causing the hero and his men to run. As they ran, thousands of Laestrygonians appeared, eating any man they captured. Once the men reached the boats, the giants began hurling huge boulders at Odysseus's ships and destroying them along with their crews. Out of the 12 ships, only Odysseus's ship managed to escape. Lamia. Lamia was a queen of Libya and a daughter of Poseidon who caught the attention of Zeus, the king of the gods. The two engaged in a passionate love affair that resulted in Lamia becoming pregnant with Zeus's child. But alas, their happiness was not to be, as Zeus's jealous wife Hera discovered their secret and kidnapped the child from Lamia's womb. Hera then deprived Lamia of the ability to close her eyes, making her constantly grieve over the loss of her child. Heartbroken and consumed with rage, Lamia turned to an unspeakable act of revenge. She began to capture and devour innocent children, causing her body to transform into a grotesque half-woman, half-snake creature, with each gruesome kill. Unable to bear the constant grief and suffering, Zeus granted Lamia a gift: the ability to remove her eyes and sleep without constant torment. After turning into a grotesque creature, Lamia became the servant of Hecate, the goddess of magic. After changing into a grotesque creature, Lamia became the servant of Hecate, the goddess of magic. In other myths, Lamia was known to use her beauty and charm to lure unsuspecting men to their deaths. As for Lamia's son, he would go on to become a beautiful boy who even won a beauty contest judged by Pan. Unfortunately, he would declare himself more beautiful than Aphrodite, who, annoyed with the boy's comment, transformed him into a shark. Lares. In Roman mythology, the Lares were known as household deities responsible for safeguarding and supervising families in their homes. However, some Lares were responsible for much larger domains, including towns, cities, the state, and the military. These spirits were believed to be departed ancestors of the Romans and held the power to influence the fate of those within their territories. Depicted as small figures holding a cornucopia and a drinking cup, the Lares were often portrayed dancing or playing musical instruments. The ancient Romans held the Lares in high esteem, believing that offering sacrifices and prayers would ensure their continued protection and favor. The Lotus Tree and the Lotus Eaters. The Lotus Tree and the Lotus Eaters are associated with an episode from Homer's Odyssey. The myth goes that as the hero Odysseus and his crew sailed home from the Trojan War, they were caught in a storm and blown off course. They eventually landed on the island of the Lotus Eaters, whose inhabitants offered them the fruit of the lotus tree to eat. Lotus fruit was so intoxicating and narcotic that those who ate it forgot their friends and family. In fact, they would lose their desire to return home and instead wanted to stay on the island forever. Odysseus, who was determined to get his journey back on track, had to drag many of his men back to their ships and force them to leave the island. Lycaon. King Lycaon was a horrible man who became the very first werewolf. He was the child of a sea nymph, and he became king of Arcadia after his mortal father passed away. According to legend, Lycaon was known for his arrogance against the gods. He invited Zeus to a feast in his palace, intending to test whether Zeus was truly divine or not. During the feast, Lycaon served Zeus the flesh of his own son, Ictimus. Zeus, furious at this horrific act, killed all of Lycaon's 49 sons and then turned Lycaon into the very first werewolf. Lycaon was then released into the wild, where he caused chaos and passed on the curse of the werewolf. Zeus, who felt bad for the young boy who was turned into soup, revived Nyctimus to life and returned to Olympus. The Lydian Dragon. Deep in the countryside of Lydia, the Lydian Dragon, who was a fearsome creature born from Gaia, was on a rampage killing innocent shepherds. One day, the dragon took the life of a nymph, which prompted the dead nymph's sister to run for help. She stumbled upon Damocin, one of the Gigantes who had taken a break from the war with the Olympians. Upon hearing the nymph's plea, Damocin rose to the challenge and fought the ferocious beast. The battle was epic, with both sides dealing major blows, and at one point, the Lydian dragon even shot a jet of poisonous venom into Damocin's face. But the giant's strength and determination proved too much for the dragon, and he ultimately ripped a tree out of the ground and used it to crush the creature's head. The dragon's mate later discovered the lifeless body of her beloved partner and used magic and a sacred plant to bring him back to life. The two dragons then fled Lydia, never to return. Another version of the myth suggests that the second dragon, after finding her dead mate, went on a rampage and attacked the kingdom of Anatolian. She would eventually be killed by the legendary hero Heracles in a fierce battle. The Manticore. The legendary manticores of Persian folklore were some of the most fearsome creatures to have ever been written about. Greek writers on natural history added to their lore, describing these mythical beasts as having the body of a lion, a human head with 3 rows of sharp teeth, and a tail covered with deadly venomous spines. These creatures were believed to be incredibly fast and agile, with the ability to jump great distances and climb trees with ease. Manticores were said to be ferocious hunters, using their lion claws and venomous spines to take down their prey. Their spines were so deadly that they could kill any creature with a single sting. When they wanted to avoid getting too close to their prey, they would launch their spines from their tail, using them as projectiles. It was said that manticores hunted any animal they came across, but they had a particular liking for human prey. Manticores also had another trick up their sleeves when they hunted. They were believed to be able to mimic human speech, making them all the more dangerous. They would use their ability to lure unsuspecting victims into their grasp, making them one of the most feared creatures in all of mythology. The Mares of Diomedes. The mares of Diomedes, also known as the man-eating mares, were a group of 4 flesh-eating horses that were owned by the Thracian king Diomedes. King Diomedes was a child of the war god Ares and loved feeding strangers and prisoners to his mares. As part of his 8th labor, Heracles was tasked with capturing the man-eating mares. Upon arriving at the stables, Heracles was met with resistance from Diomedes, who attempted to tie him up in his sleep. However, Heracles woke up in time and overpowered Diomedes, dragging him to the stables. There, the hero threw the king to the ravenous horses as punishment for his deceit and cruelty. The horses devoured Diomedes alive, and their hunger was temporarily sated. Heracles then led the mares back to King Eurystheus as proof of his success in completing the labor. However, Eurystheus was so terrified of the man-eating horses that he ordered them to be released into the wild. The mares ran rampant, causing chaos and destruction wherever they went, and no one was safe from their insatiable hunger for flesh. Eventually, though, Zeus intervened and sent wild animals to devour the mares of Diomedes. The Minotaur. The Minotaur, a creature of legend born from a twisted love affair between Pasiphae and a magnificent bull gifted to King Minos by Poseidon. The Minotaur was half man, half bull, and its fearsome appearance was only matched by its insatiable hunger for human flesh. In mythology, King Minos, desperate to prove his legitimacy as the ruler of Crete, asked Poseidon to send him a sign. So the sea god sent him a magnificent bull and told Minos to sacrifice it to him. However, Minos was so taken with the creature's beauty that he decided to keep it instead. In revenge, Poseidon caused Minos' wife Pasiphae to fall in love with the bull, and from their union was born the Minotaur. While Pasiphae couldn't believe what she had done, the Minotaur was still her child, and so she nursed her son and gave him the name Asterion, a name only she would ever use. Horrified with his wife's child, Minos followed the directions of the Oracle of Delphi and had the great inventor Daedalus build a great labyrinth under his palace. Minos then took the Minotaur and placed him in the labyrinth, preventing the creature's escape. There, the Minotaur became a lonely and cruel creature, chasing and then feeding on the poor humans that King Minos threw into the labyrinth. After defeating Athens in a war, King Minos demanded that the city send 7 young men and 7 young women as tribute every 7 years to be fed to the Minotaur. This went on for many years until Theseus, the Prince of Athens, volunteered to be one of the tributes in order to slay the beast and end the cycle of sacrifice. With the help of King Minos' daughter, Ariadne, who fell in love with Theseus, the hero was able to navigate the labyrinth and locate the Minotaur. Armed with a sword and his wits, Theseus faced the creature in a fierce battle. Finally, the Minotaur charged at him with rage, but Theseus managed to dodge its attack and strike a fatal blow. Mormo. Mormo was a frightening female spirit who had been cursed into not being able to pass on to the underworld after she ate her own children. According to legend, Mormo was a terrifying creature that haunted the dreams of young children and brought them nightmares. She was often described as having a body of a woman, but with wings and sharp claws like a bird of prey. Mormo was said to lurk in the shadows, waiting for her next victim to fall asleep, before swooping in and tormenting them with terrifying visions and sounds. In some versions of the myth, Mormo was able to touch people and had a liking for human flesh, making her all the more terrifying. The Myrmidons. In the scorching deserts of Libya and India, there lurked a species of ants unlike any other. These were not just any ordinary ants, but giant ants as large as wolves. These ants were known as the Myrmidons, and they were said to be fierce creatures that hoarded and guarded great deposits of gold deep within their anthills. Their menacing presence made travelers shudder in fear, for they knew that if they stumbled upon a nest of Myrmidons, they may never return alive. But those weren't the only ant-like creatures in Greek mythology. There's also a legendary myth of a group of ant people known as the Myrmidons. These were not just ordinary people, but a fierce and hardy race of men created and transformed by Zeus from ants on a cursed island. With their origins rooted in the world of ants, these men were intensely loyal to their leader and wore armor the color of rich brown earth. These Myrmidons were known for their undying loyalty, and they served as the trusted soldiers of the mighty Achilles when he went to war against Troy. Their reputation as fierce warriors was well earned, and they were feared by their enemies when they swarmed the battlefield. The Nemean Lion. In the dark region of Nemea, a fearsome creature lurked, the Nemean Lion. With a hide that could withstand any weapon, this monster was the offspring of the monstrous Typhon and Echidna, and it had a taste for both human and animal flesh. The people lived in constant fear until the mighty hero Heracles was given the task of slaying the beast as his first labor. Armed with his club and bow, Heracles entered the lion's cave and found the beast asleep. His arrow struck true, but bounced harmlessly off the lion's invincible hide, waking it from its slumber. A fierce battle ensued, with the lion shrugging off blows from Heracles' club. Forced to fight up close, Heracles discarded his club and engaged in hand-to-claw combat. The battle was intense, with the hero receiving many wounds, but Heracles emerged victorious by strangling the lion with his bare hands. From the lion's impenetrable hide, Heracles fashioned a cloak, which he would wear in future adventures. Nymphs. Nymphs are female nature spirits in Greek mythology. They were often depicted as beautiful young maidens who lived in various natural settings such as mountains, forests, and water sources. Nymphs were associated with different aspects of nature and were said to have the power to control the natural elements. For example, the Oceanids, the Nereids, and the Naiads were water nymphs who dwelt in streams, springs, fountains, lakes, and the oceans. Dryads, though, were tree nymphs who lived in the forests and were connected to the trees they inhabited. There were also nymphs of the earth, the underworld, and even nymphs of the sunset. Nymphs were known to be playful, mischievous, and sometimes even dangerous to humans who crossed their paths. They were often the object of desire for gods and mortals alike, and many myths tell of the love affairs between nymphs and various male figures such as Zeus, Apollo, and Pan. Despite their reputation for being alluring and enchanting, nymphs were also said to be quite elusive, disappearing into the natural world when pursued by mortals. They were also sometimes portrayed as vengeful when their natural homes were threatened or destroyed by humans. Some of the most famous nymphs include Echo, Calypso, the Hesperides, and Amalthea, the goat nymph who nursed baby Zeus. The Ophiotaurus. The Ophiotaurus was a strange and powerful creature that had the body of a bull and the tail of a sea serpent. It was said to have been born to the Earth Mother Gaia, and was believed to possess the ability to grant the power to kill gods to whomever sacrificed its entrails. In mythology, during the war between the Titans and the gods, the Titans tried to sacrifice the Ophiotaurus in order to gain the upper hand against the gods. Luckily, Zeus was able to save the creature before it was sacrificed. Orthurus. Orthurus was a giant monstrous dog that had not one but two heads and a serpent's tail. As the faithful guard dog of the three-bodied giant, Geryon, Orthurus was fierce and ferocious. He was also one of the children of Typhon and Echidna, making Orthurus's reputation even greater. But when the mighty Heracles came to capture Geryon's cattle for his 10th labor, Orthurus met his match. As soon as he laid eyes on the hero, the two-headed dog launched himself into a brutal attack. However, Heracles was ready, and with a single blow of his club, he vanquished Orthurus. Pegasus. Pegasus was a magnificent winged horse who was often depicted as a symbol of grace, beauty, and freedom. In mythology, Pegasus was the offspring of the sea god Poseidon and the Gorgon Medusa. In the myth, when the hero Perseus beheaded Medusa, Pegasus sprang fully grown and fully winged from her neck, ready to take flight. Pegasus later became the companion and mount for the hero Bellerophon. Together they embarked on a perilous quest to slay the Chimera, a monstrous creature with the head of a lion, the body of a goat, and the tail of a serpent. Pegasus was crucial to their success, as the Chimera was too dangerous to fight on land. With the help of the winged horse, Bellerophon was able to fly above the Chimera and deliver a fatal blow with his spear, defeating the creature once and for all. However, Bellerophon's hubris got the better of him, and he decided to use Pegasus to fly to Olympus, the home of the gods. This act angered Zeus, who sent a gadfly to bite Pegasus, causing the winged horse to buck Bellerophon off his back. The hero fell into a thorn bush and became blinded, while Pegasus kept flying to Olympus, where he became the honored carrier for Zeus's thunderbolts. The Phoenix. According to legend, the phoenix was a beautiful and sacred bird that lived for hundreds of years before dying and being reborn from its own ashes. The phoenix was believed to be the size of an eagle, with feathers that were red, orange, and yellow in color, resembling flames. While the majestic bird is thought to originate from Egypt, there are those that say the Egyptians were influenced by classical folklore. The phoenix was said to have lived in Arabia, near a cool well where it would go to bathe and sing its beautiful songs. At the end of its long life, the phoenix would build a nest of cinnamon twigs and other fragment materials in the sanctuary of the sun titan Helios, located in the Egyptian city Heliopolis. The phoenix would then sit in the nest and set it on fire with a single clap of its wings. From the ashes, a new young phoenix would rise, and the cycle would begin anew. Python. In the world of Greek mythology, Python was a monstrous dragon serpent of immense size and power. As the myth goes, Python was born from the Earth Mother, Gaia, after the great flood that devastated the world. He was instructed by Gaia to become the guardian of the Oracle of Delphi and forbid anyone seeking to have their prophecy read. However, Hera, the wife of Zeus, had her own plans for Python. She asked the dragon serpent to kill the titan Leto when she arrived in Delphi. Leto was pregnant with Zeus's children, Artemis and Apollo, but she was cursed by Hera, so she wouldn't be able to give birth on any land with roots in the earth. Leto, not knowing what to do, went to seek the oracle's advice on where she could find a place to give birth to her children. Upon her arrival in Delphi, Python attacked Leto fiercely, causing her great harm before she was able to escape. Eventually, Leto gave birth to her twins, Apollo and Artemis, on the floating island of Delos. Apollo, enraged by what Python had done to his mother, and seeking to establish himself as the master of the Oracle of Delphi, engaged in a fierce battle with the serpent. Armed with his newly acquired bow, Apollo battled Python for days until he finally defeated the monster by shooting it with 100 arrows. As a result of his victory over Python, Apollo claimed the city of Delphi as his own and established it as the site of the most important oracle in Greece. In honor of the great battle, Apollo declared that all future oracles of Delphi would be named Pythia. Satyrs. With their wild and uninhibited behavior, satyrs have long been a fascination in Greek mythology. These mischievous creatures were often portrayed with the upper body of a human and the lower body of a goat, complete with long hair, pointed ears, and goat horns. Myths involving them usually describe them as playing musical instruments and dancing wildly in fields and forests. Satyrs were closely associated with Dionysus, the god of wine and revelry, and were known to accompany him on his wild celebrations and bacchanalian festivals. Satyrs were also believed to be the followers of the woodland god Pan, and were sometimes depicted as his offspring. Some even claim that the first satyrs were the children of the first nymphs, the Meliae, making the first satyrs the grandchildren of the sky father Uranus. Other tribes of satyrs were said to be born from Pan, Hermes, Dionysus, Zeus, and Silenus. Despite their association with other gods, satyrs were frequently featured in Greek mythology as characters in their own right. In the myth of Orpheus, the famous musician is followed by a group of satyrs as he descends into the underworld to retrieve his dead wife. In another myth, a satyr named Marsyas challenges the god Apollo to a musical contest, only to be flayed alive for his arrogance. Scorpio. In Greek mythology, Scorpio was a giant scorpion associated with one of the mythic versions of the myth of Arion the hunter. In this version of the myth, Arion was a great hunter who was in love with the goddess of the hunt, Artemis. Wanting to impress Artemis, Orion boasted that he would hunt every animal on Earth. As he did so, the Earth Mother Gaia noticed the loss of life and was not pleased. So, she summoned her son Scorpio and sent him to kill Orion. Scorpio faced off against Orion in a ferocious battle that ended with the death of both. When Artemis found her friend's lifeless body, she was overcome with grief. In a tribute to their valor and sacrifice, she raised both Orion's and Scorpio's bodies into the stars, where they remain to this day as celestial constellations. Scylla. Scylla was known for her terrorizing presence in the narrow sea passage between Italy and Sicily, alongside her counterpart Charybdis, the whirlpool monster. She was born to Phorcys, the god of sea dangers, and Ceto, the goddess of sea monsters. She was depicted as a creature with the upper body of a woman, with 12 tentacle-like legs, 6 dog heads that encircled her waist, a fish tail, and 6 necks, each with a grisly head that boasted 3 rows of razor-sharp teeth. She was originally a beautiful woman who caught the attention of the minor sea god, Glaucus. However, despite his best efforts to court her, Scylla was not interested and fled from him. Undeterred, Glaucus sought out the sorceress Circe and asked for a love potion to win over Scylla's heart. In doing so, he accidentally made Circe fall in love with him. However, when Glaucus rejected her advances, Circe grew furious and made a cursed poison which she poured into a pond where Scylla often bathed. The moment Scylla entered the pond, she transformed into the monstrous sea creature that she would forever be known as. Afterwards, Scylla made her home in a cave overlooking the narrow pass, where her 6 heads would gobble any sailor who passed too close to her cliffs. Even the mighty Odysseus had to make a decision about which monster to face during his journey home, Scylla or Charybdis. He ultimately chose to face Scylla, but the cost was high, as he lost 6 of his men to her deadly jaws. The Scythian Dracana. In Greek mythology, the Scythian Dracana was a fierce female dragon and the first leader of Scythia. She was no ordinary dragon, but a being with the upper body of a stunning woman and 2 serpent tails for legs, making her a fearsome sight to behold. During the travels of Heracles with the cattle of Geryon, the Scythian Dracana encountered him and decided to steal some of the cattle for herself. She refused to return them unless Heracles agreed to mate with her. Despite his initial reluctance, Heracles eventually succumbed to her demands and slept with her, resulting in her becoming pregnant with triplets. In return for his cooperation, the Scythian Dracana gave Heracles back his cattle, but not before he left her his powerful bow and belt. Heracles then informed her that she should pass her kingdom to the son who was able to shoot the bow and wear the belt. After giving birth to her 3 sons, the Scythian Dracana held a contest to see which of them was capable of shooting the bow and wearing the belt. Only the youngest son was successful, and as a result he became the next king of Scythia, therefore making Heracles the ancestor to a long line of Scythian kings. The Sirens. The Sirens were very dangerous creatures, closely resembling the Harpies. They were either depicted as alluring women with bird-like wings for arms, or as vulture-like birds with stunning human faces. Depending on the myth, there were anywhere from 2 to 8 sirens. According to legend, the Sirens were born from the union of Achelous, the river god, and one of the Muses. In mythology, they were the handmaidens of Persephone. When Persephone was captured by Hades, her mother Demeter either gave the Sirens wings to help search for her, or blamed them for allowing her daughter to be kidnapped and changed them into ugly birds. Regardless, the sirens eventually gave up looking for Persephone and decided to make their home on an island. There, the sirens would use their seductive singing voices to lure sailors towards them. Their songs were so irresistible that sailors would become entranced and steer their ships towards the island, crashing them into the rocky shores and drowning in the process. The famous Greek hero Odysseus encountered the sirens on his journey home from the Trojan War. Although warned of their danger by the sorceress Circe, Odysseus still wanted to hear their song. He instructed his crew to fill their ears with wax and tie him to the mast of his ship so he could hear the siren song without being lured to his death. Another Greek hero who faced the sirens was Jason, the leader of the Argonauts, on his quest for the Golden Fleece. He was able to pass the sirens by having the musician Orpheus play music that was more enchanting than the siren song. Scolopendra. Prepared to be awed by the terror that was Scolopendra, a monstrous creature that lurked in the depths of the sea. This colossal beast was unlike anything ever seen before. A terrifying mix of a lobster and a millipede with strange manipulative hairs sprouting from its nostrils. According to legend, Scolopendra was born from the very depths of the sea, the offspring of the mighty Ceto, goddess of all sea monsters. Its size was simply unbelievable, as it was said to be the largest sea monster ever recorded in Greek history, a true titan of the deep. Scolopendra was truly a sight to behold, with a flat crayfish-like tail and webbed feet lining its flanks. Its massive form was covered in hard chitinous plates, making it impervious to all but the strongest attacks. Perhaps the most terrifying of all were the hairy nostrils that adorned its monstrous face, hairs that could manipulate and ensnare any unfortunate prey that came too close. The Spartoi. In the epic tales of Greek mythology, the Spartoi were not your average warriors. They were fierce, unyielding creatures descended from the Ismenian Dragon's teeth, half which were sown by the legendary Cadmus, founder and first king of Thebes. From the soil where the dragon's teeth were planted sprung fully armed warriors known as the Spartoi. These creatures were said to be fearless and incredibly strong, marching towards Cadmus with the intention of attacking him. But Cadmus, quick on his feet, threw a stone, hitting one of the Spartoi and causing them to fight among themselves until only 5 were left. These 5 warriors became the founding fathers of Thebes and the loyal generals of Cadmus. The Spartoi were revered and their lineage highly regarded in Thebes. They were known for their bravery, loyalty, and unwavering dedication to their city and its people. The Spartoi also appeared during Jason's quest for the Golden Fleece. In his quest, Jason had to deal with the Spartoi as King Aeetes had set 3 difficult tasks for him to complete before he would hand over the Golden Fleece. One of Jason's tasks was to take the other half of the Ismenian Dragon's teeth and defeat the warriors that appeared after he sowed the teeth. Luckily, Medea, the king's daughter, told Jason how Cadmus dealt with the Spartoi, and he followed suit. Jason threw a massive rock in the midst of the Spartoi, causing them to fight each other until there was only one remaining. Jason then easily defeated the last standing Spartoi and completed his task. The Sphinx. Born from the union of the fearsome Typhon and Echidna, the Sphinx was a monstrous creature with the head and breasts of a woman, the body of a lion, the wings of an eagle, and sometimes a tailed serpent. It was said that the gods themselves sent the Sphinx from Ethiopia to the city of Thebes as punishment for a grievous insult against them. The Sphinx made her lair on a high rock overlooking the city, and there she would sit, waiting for travelers to come by. As they passed, she would pose a riddle to them, a riddle that only the wisest and most clever could solve. The riddle went like this: what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon, and 3 legs in the evening? For many years, the Sphinx terrorized the people of Thebes, devouring anyone who couldn't answer her riddle. The city was in a constant state of fear until the arrival of the hero Oedipus. Oedipus, a man of great intelligence, was able to solve the riddle of the Sphinx. His answer was simple but profound. Man. The answer to your riddle, Sphinx, is man, who crawls on all fours as a baby, walks on 2 legs as an adult, and uses a cane in old age. The Sphinx was unable to refute the answer, and she was so enraged that she threw herself off the cliff and died. The people of Thebes were overjoyed at their newfound freedom from the Sphinx's terror, and they hailed Oedipus as a hero and as their new king. The Stymphalian Birds. The Stymphalian birds were a fearsome and deadly species of man-eating birds that made their home in the marshes of Lake Stymphalia in Arcadia. These birds were the size of cranes, with bronzed beaks, razor-sharp feathers that they could launch like arrows, and poisonous dung. According to myth, these birds were the pets of Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, and had been raised by Ares, the god of war. As their numbers grew, the Stymphalian birds began to swarm over the countryside, destroying crops, fruit trees, and even attacking townspeople. The situation became so dire that Heracles was summoned to deal with the problem as a part of his 6th labor. However, Heracles faced a unique challenge. The marsh where the birds made their home were so treacherous that he couldn't walk on it. But with the help of Athena, the goddess of wisdom, Heracles was given a rattle crafted by Hephaestus. As he shook the rattle, the birds emerged from their nests, allowing Heracles to shoot them down with his bow and arrows, which were dipped in the poisonous blood of the Hydra. After a fierce battle, the remaining birds fled, seeking refuge on an island where they became known as the Birds of Ares. It wasn't the last time the Stymphalian birds would face danger, however. When the Argonauts, led by Jason, passed through the region, the birds attacked them. But luckily, the Argonauts were able to drive them off, and the birds had to flee yet again. The Telchines. In the primordial days of Greek mythology, there were strange and powerful beings known as the Telchines. These creatures, born of the primordial sea gods Pontus and Thalassa, had sleek, seal-like bodies, flippers for hands and feet, and fierce dog-like heads. They were said to be able to shapeshift, but their true power lay in their mastery of metalworking. They were known throughout the ancient world for their skill in creating magical amulets and talismans, but their abilities came with a dark side. The Telchines were feared for their dark magic, which was capable of causing disease and death. In fact, they were even called upon Gaia herself to help forge the terrible scythe that Kronos would use to castrate the Sky Father, Uranus. During the Great War between the gods and the Titans, the Telchines allied themselves with the Titans, and their dark magic was put to use in the fight. During the war, the Telchines attempted to create a new weapon by mixing sulfur with water from the underworld river Styx. The result was disastrous, killing countless animals and plants in the area. Zeus, the king of the gods, took notice of the Telchines' actions and was enraged by their use of dark magic. In response, he struck them down with one of his thunderbolts, banishing them to the depths of Tartarus. Typhon. Prepare to be mesmerized by the epic tale of Typhon, the most fearsome and powerful monster in Greek mythology. He was born to Gaia, the primordial goddess of the earth, and Tartarus, the primordial god of the pit. Typhon was not your typical monster. He was depicted as a massive, winged, grotesque creature whose height reached the stars. From the waist up, he had a man-like appearance with 2 coiled serpents in place of legs. He had 200 hands, each consisting of 50 serpent-headed fingers. He also had 100 heads, one of which was human, fitted with a full beard and flaming eyes, while the other 99 heads were the heads of different beasts. And to top it off, his breath was said to be hot enough to melt mountains. His voice was like the sound of 1,000 wild creatures roaring, and anywhere he went, a giant storm followed. According to myth, Gaia was furious with the defeat of the Titans and the Gigantes, so she gave birth to her final child, Typhon, to get revenge against the Olympians. But before he invaded Mount Olympus, Typhon had mated with the queen of monsters, Echidna, and together the two had many monstrous children, including the Hydra, the two-headed dog Orthrus, Cerberus, the Sphinx, the Nemean lion, the Chimera, the Colchian Dragon, who was the guardian of the Golden Fleece, the 100-headed dragon Ladon, the Caucasian Eagle, the Temesian Fox, and the Crommyonian Sow. After the birth of his terrible children, Typhon began his relentless assault by attacking Mount Olympus, the home of the gods. He hurled boulders, lightning, and thunderbolts at the mountain, causing earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. The gods were terrified of Typhon and fled to Egypt, where they transformed themselves into animals to hide away from him. However, Zeus, the king of the gods, did not run. He stood his ground and decided to face Typhon in a battle to the death. Zeus began by hurling lightning bolts at Typhon, but the monster was able to absorb them and deflect them back at Zeus. Typhon then hurled mountains at Zeus, but the king of the gods was able to dodge them and hurl them back at Typhon. Zeus and Typhon continued in their fierce struggle, unleashing all of their powers. Typhon tried overwhelming Zeus with his strength and his multiple heads, each of which could breathe fire or poison. But Zeus was quick and agile and continued to launch lightning bolt after lightning bolt to strike Typhon repeatedly. But eventually Typhon managed to grab Zeus and rip the tendons from his arms and legs, rendering him powerless. Typhon then imprisoned Zeus in a cave deep under the mountains. However, with the help of Hermes and the god Pan, who restole the tendons from Typhon, Zeus was able to escape his prison and regain his strength. He then returned to the battlefield to resume his battle with Typhon. In the end, Zeus was able to defeat Typhon by trapping him beneath Mount Etna, a massive volcano in Sicily. It is said to this very day that the volcanic eruptions from Mount Etna are caused by Typhon's rage and attempts to escape his prison. And there you have it. We've reached the end of our epic journey through the A to Z list of mythical creatures from Greek mythology. From the fearsome Typhon to the ferocious Nemean lion, we've explored the depths of these mythical beings that have captured our imaginations for centuries and continue to inspire us today in books, movies, and games. But before we say our goodbyes, let's not forget about the exciting scavenger hunt giveaway we've got going on. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our channel and keep your eyes peeled for the hidden question somewhere in this video. Answer the question correctly in the comments down below, and you could win a bundle of the 5 Percy Jackson books. We'll randomly select one lucky winner and announce them in our next video, so be sure to stay tuned and hit that notification button. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your fellow mythology enthusiasts. So until next time, we hope to see you again here on Wild Mythology.